what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We're on episode 33, coming at you a day early. Yeah. Well, not for our listeners. They won't know because it's releasing on Saturday, but we've gotten in this habit where we've been doing Saturday morning recordings and then posting it Saturday evening or Saturday night or afternoon or whatever, but we're actually doing it on Friday because tomorrow is the 4th of July, so both have plans there. So how you doing this morning? Good?
Fantastic.
Yep.
Got up early. Beat the sun up by a couple hours, so it's always a good morning.
And you were on a call prior
Yep.
to, so you've been up a lot longer than I have. I got up probably about, I think my alarm went off right at 4 o'clock or 4:05, and then, I talked to you shortly after that through text, and you said, hey, I'm already on a call, so I'll be there in a bit. So we sat around, talked for a while. The sun is slowly starting to creep up. The birds are speaking, and we're here recording in Studio B.
How was your week this week, lifting and stuff, training?
Again, it's going to be much like I said before in other episodes. It was boring but productive. So, nothing groundbreaking. Previously, I had been doing, ever since coronavirus was lifted, the restrictions were lifted, went back to the gym, I'd been doing 3 days a week, just a push-pull leg split. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then taking off Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So I was actually off more than I was training. Now it's gotten to the point where we can upregulate volume a little bit, or volume, frequency, pretty much everything. So I've added, another day. So Fridays, instead of doing my leg days on Fridays, we're going to push those to Saturday morning. And then I'm going to do kind of essentially a shoulder day on Fridays.
Nice.
So it's going to be push Monday, pull Tuesday. Friday is going to be a shoulder day, which is going to incorporate upper back as well. So traps and rear delts and stuff. So there's going to be push on Monday, pull on Wednesday, push and pull, kind of combo day, mixed day on Friday. And then Saturday morning is going to be lower body. So I'm, instead of being where I was training 3 days and off 4, I'm going to train 4 and off 3. And then eventually probably work up till 5 training days. But I think 4 is a good place to kind of start for now because I don't want to go too fast, especially because, like we talked in previous episode, all my training's pretty heavy now, relatively speaking. So doing a lower volume, higher intensity split, you need a little bit more recovery time, specifically with the nervous system and stuff. So I think that it's going to be good, but just a little bit at a time, baby steps. So today will be a shoulder day later on this afternoon.
Awesome.
How about you? I know you had a pretty eventful week.
Yeah, it's been a long week. I decided, when I switched gyms and stuff, the new gym I go to is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I don't have hours restrictions. As we've talked, I don't mind getting up really early. So
yeah, especially with, the fire department and stuff, your schedule's kind of unpredictable, unpredictably hectic.
Right. So I, last week I had talked to the guy that had been training with me, and I said, hey, what do you think about starting to lift or work out and stuff in the morning at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning before I go to work? And I was like, I'm going to be kind of selfish here because I've been doing this by myself for a long time, so I'm always selfish in my training a little bit. But it works better for my schedule to get up and do it before work than after.
Sure.
So, and he was like, yeah, man, other than the weeks that I'm on afternoon, that works for me. So I was like, cool. So I texted him, and said, we're going to start going at 3 o'clock in the morning. So whatever time you need to get up, that's fine. And anyway, so I started doing that on Monday, but Sunday I did a Murph. For everybody that's not familiar with it, it's a challenge. It's a workout that kind of originated and got big and popular in CrossFit, but it started from the as a tribute to, I'm gonna butcher his name, but his name's Murphy. He was a Navy SEAL. He was part of Operation Red Wings, and unfortunately lost his life in the line of duty. So the workout itself is a 1 mile run as hard as you can, and then 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 pull-ups. I lied. Sorry. 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and then 300 air squats.
Gotcha.
And then you run another mile. So you're supposed to do the whole thing in a weighted vest. I did not do the whole thing in a weighted vest. I did the last mile with a 25-pound plate with me,
Mm-hmm.
but it was rough, dude. I did assisted pull-ups because obviously I'm not able to do 100 pull-ups, but so we did assist. I did my pull-ups on the assisted machine, and then we did push-ups. Obviously form kind of got compromised towards the end, but it was tough. It was probably one of the hardest physical fit things I've done, and was no training. I didn't train for it. You know what I mean? It was.
Yeah.
I've been talking about doing one since last year, and like last year, it kind of got away from me, and I didn't end up doing it. But this year, I planned on training for it all through COVID, and didn't have access to a pull-up machine because, like I said, I can't do physical pull-ups. So we did the assisted. So I didn't train for it, but I was like, you know what? This year I'm just going to do it. So.
And I had got to be honest, I've never fully understood the premise behind it. I knew that the Murph was to commemorate someone who was in the service, but I didn't know exactly what day it was on. I didn't know what the purpose was. And it just seemed for whatever reason that this year I kind of I don't know if it's just talking to you and being more familiar with it or whatever, but I kind of researched a little bit. I saw that Redcon, what they did down at their gym in Boca Raton, is they actually live streamed it, and they had a ton of people there. It was pretty cool to see. So anytime that you can do something to help commemorate men and women in our service is pretty remarkable. And for me too, I think that sometimes we lose sight of how important those things are.
Right.
Our freedoms, especially right now where freedom of speech and freedom to gather are very, very big, hot topics for us. I think that it's important to recognize that those freedoms are free they're free to us for a reason. Yeah. And I think we have to just be cognizant of that and be aware. And it's easy to lose sight of that.
Absolutely.
The analogy that I often reference with anything as far as being thankful is, just something as simple as waking out of bed and getting up and walking out of your room.
Right.
You don't wake up every morning, at least I don't, and say, gosh, I'm so thankful that I have legs. But, if you don't have legs, you would be hard-pressed to not be thankful for having them at one point, or wishing that you had them. And there's so many things in life, this is kind of an somewhat off topic, but, going along those lines, I was watching America's Got Talent, which is, I don't watch TV ever because I never have time to watch TV. But in the rare instances that I do, I'll either watch sporting events or occasionally I'll just stumble upon something. And I tend to like watching America's Got Talent because it's so much more encompassing than something like American Idol where it's just singing. Not that, singing just isn't my thing. I'm not an expert on it. I can't tell a good voice from a bad voice. Just not into music in that sense. I'm not artistic at all. But watching America's Got Talent is pretty cool because there's so many different places that people come from and so many different backstories. And there was this one girl who was she was 15 years old and she wanted to be a country singer. And her family suffered from some type of, I believe it was a hereditary disorder where they were progressively going blind. So her mother had it, she was blind. Her father had it, he was blind. And her sibling, her one sister was 9 years old and progressively going blind. She had these big, Coke bottle thick glasses. Wow. And it made me sit and pause for a moment because the girl who was performing, like I said, 15-year-old girl, was so positive and had this beautiful outlook on life. And I just wonder, how often I go through everyday life with so many important blessings that I kind of take for granted and you're neglectful of, just being able to see.
Right.
Imagine your eyesight going away and not being able to see. And even little things in the gym when you have an injury and you if you tweak your shoulder and you can't lift your arm a certain way, you never realize how many things hurt your shoulder and how many things you can't do once that's taken away from you. So, we don't want to get overly corny here, but I think it's important to recognize all these things to be thankful for and freedom of saying what we want, doing what we want, dressing how we want, acting how we want.
Who we want.
Yeah, those freedoms, like you said, are not free, and we need to be recognizing the reason why or the reason behind that. So I think that Murph is the least we can do.
Well, that was the whole idea. Is I took from the research I did that I should probably dedicate it to somebody or something, and I decided to do it in like recognition, and I hope that even just talking about it a little bit helps it, but in recognition of the 22 a day movement, 22 veterans a day think about or are depressed or actually do or attempt to kill themselves. And that's a travesty in this country. And that's why I decided to put myself through that crap, for lack of better words, because it was terrible. I mean, my legs still hurt, and it's 5 days later. So that's what I did last week, and then I started working out in the morning, which was awesome. I was also on that 4-day split deal, where I was working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I took Thursday off, and then I would do legs on Friday. So this week I did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm taking today and the weekend off. But being in the morning, I have so much more time.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yep. I love getting up early because of that.
Yeah,
because you still are allotted a certain amount of time. Everybody is allocated 24 hours in their day. But when you get up early, it's more of a mental tone that it sets for the rest of the day. And you and I have discussed this, multiple times on air, where when you wake up early and you're productive, then the rest of the day becomes productive because of that. Like, that's how I am. So I hate when it's nighttime.
The day's over.
And I start to get motivated because I'm like, man, I'm really motivated to do a lot right now, whether it's, bang out a lot of emails for clients or, even go to the gym and train for myself or clean the house or do all these little things and wash my car. I hate when I get that motivation at night because then it's like, all right, I got to wind down a little bit. Like, it's awesome when you get up super early. For example, this morning I'm up at 4 a.m. and going to have a podcast recorded, going to have a lot of things done before a lot of people even wake up.
Yep.
So that just sets the tone for the rest of my day, and the rest of my day is productive. Now, I can't go as far as you do and necessarily work out in the mornings. I've done it in instances where I had no choice. For example, let's flash back to when I was coaching football. I would go to after school when I teach all day, then I go to football, and then I would have to train clients after football until night. And then by the time night rolls around, I have to go to bed. I can't stay up late and train. So realistically, the only option, or not necessarily the only option, but the best option was for me to train in the morning. So I did it, during football season for several weeks when I had to. But it was definitely less than optimal for me. And the way I explain it to people is that there's a big difference between getting up early and lifting or training. For me, it's that next level, almost like a different switch that you have to flip in your head to go into training, like to wake yourself up, not literally, but figuratively, wake up and get focused. And it's difficult for me to do that in the morning. I can certainly be productive at work or certainly be productive around the house, but just the energy requirements that early in the morning are difficult. I remember there were instances like last year before my show, when I was doing fasted cardio. Luckily, I only had to do fasted cardio for a couple weeks. But I was doing it first thing in the morning, and even just getting up early and walking, like I was up early, but then the walking part, was tedious for me. So
I actually just talked about that. Like, I've been posting a short couple workout clips and like a synopsis of my workout every day. And I kind of am doing that for accountability of myself and and just to show that. To tell somebody else, because maybe somebody else will do it, right? Or do something.
Yeah.
Maybe there's somebody that was where I was at one point that needs to see somebody else doing it before they start, because I was that guy at one point. Anyways, I've been doing that, and I think I'm doing mainly so I can watch and make sure I'm putting the effort in. I'm not just going through the motions. I'm not getting up in the morning because I need to save time. So I'm going to go through the motions and get this done. But I want to make sure that every set, every rep, every part of the workout is quality.
Yeah.
From the stretching beforehand to the post-workout meal afterwards, everything's quality. And that actually is leading into a little bit more of what I was going to talk about. It was funny because a couple of my numbers went down this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I broke a cardinal rule that Charlie instilled in me when I first started this thing is don't change more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So I did a Murph on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and I usually am recovering on Sunday.
Yeah.
I started working out in the morning on Monday. I also changed my diet pretty much completely this week and got back to a really strict caloric restrictions, and food choices are more strict. I also am training fasted. So I had like 3 big changes all in 1 week, and I wondered why my numbers went down. I'm like, I'm going to have to do this for 3 or 4 weeks to figure it out.
That's one of the downfalls of the logbook is because if you're doing a logbook, you have to be I don't know if necessarily intelligent enough, but you have to be open-minded enough and see the bigger picture to know what variables contribute to what. So I had similar thing. Mine was only one particular thing that was off. When I went on Monday for my push day, this was 2 weeks ago. It was actually like a really bad day. Like numbers went down in 2 exercises, which my lifts have no reason to be down.
Right.
I'm eating in a surplus, continuing to push food on a weekly basis, training heavier and heavier, doing everything the right way, like staying up with on my therapy and my mobility work. And I'm just doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing in order to progress. And 2 of my lifts went down. So not only did I stay the same, but in essence, you would think he, quote, got weaker because the numbers were not where they should have been. And I said, okay, why is this happening? Sleep was good. Nutrition was good. Hydration was good. Training was good. Well, a couple of days or a day before, 2 days before, because it was a Saturday, because that was a Monday. The Saturday previous to that, I went and trained with a soon-to-be bodybuilder named Tommy. I would give him a social media plug, but he doesn't have social media. So he's a 17-year-old kid who lives nearby, who one of my former athletes knows. One of my former athletes, Brady, transferred schools and knows him from baseball. They're on the same baseball team, like in summer league or whatever. And this Tommy kid said he wanted to be a bodybuilder. So Brady said, oh, well, my old strength and conditioning coach is a bodybuilder. He competes. Like, I can put you in contact with him. So long story short, I ended up meeting up with this kid, training at his gym, and kind of showing him through some posing work and giving him my insights on training, because he's got a ton of potential and he's only 17 years old. So just kind of showed him the ropes, like being the wise old man, so to speak.
Is it really so to speak anymore?
No.
I mean, I'm
old. Yeah. But anyway, so on Saturday, he and I trained a push day. So it was a very chest-dominant push day. We did a couple chest movements with some shoulders and tries kind of mingled in there a little bit. Well, then 2 days later, I went to train chest heavy again. Now, I felt okay. I felt recovered, like chest was fine, wasn't sore, but numbers were down.
Right.
And then when I look back, I say, oh, that's the only thing I changed. So flash forward to Saturday, I went back up to his gym in Youngstown and trained with Tommy again. We did a push day, but it was a shoulder focus. So we stayed away from chest, worked a little bit of shoulders, which could, indirectly affect the push day that I had on Monday. But it was a little bit higher rep, less heavy weight, and again, shoulder focused. And come Monday, numbers were right back up. So that's why you don't change multiple things at once, because when you change too many variables, you're not sure what necessarily is at play, both positive and negative. Like people will ask me, oh, what do you think about this supplement? Like this, fat burner I got at GNC, or let's take Redcon supplements, just because it's something that you and I are both familiar with, being affiliated with them. Let's take like Double Tap, which is one of Redcon's fat burners. They'll say, oh, well, I took, Double Tap. What did you think of it, Charlie? And I'll say, well, it's kind of difficult for me to say, because it wasn't an isolated addition to a training split that I was already on. So, for example, if I took it during a prep scenario, because that's when you want to burn fat, is when you're getting ready for a show. If I'm doing cardio and I'm in a caloric deficit, like I'm dieting, and I'm training obviously very hard, and, I'm doing all these things to lose fat, and I add in a supplement, I was going to continue to lose fat
regardless
of if I added that or not. So I can't objectively say, oh, well, it gave me this much % fat loss because, 25% of my fat loss was from the cardio, 70% of it was from the diet, 5% of it was from you can't do that.
Right.
So that's why you don't try to change too many things at once, because when you do, you're not really exactly sure what's contributing to what. At least for you, all three of those things at least it could have impacted or did, I guess, impact your workouts or performance negatively.
And it wasn't so much negatively because I try to quantify my workouts in multiple ways. On the logbook, first and foremost, I want to make sure that it's going up either reps or weight.
Yeah.
But also feel like, how do I feel? Do I feel strong? Do I feel like I'm having to work harder for that weight, or do I feel like that particular weight for that particular movement is getting easier?
There's a time where and I think we spoke on this last week, there's a time where I'll do like a bench press for, let's say I have a set of 8 and I'll get all 8 reps, but it didn't feel as good as I thought it should have felt. Like wasn't in exact control. I didn't have as an acute mind-muscle connection as I would have liked. So, okay, I'm going to do this again just to feel better. And if the weight feels easier next week, that's indicative of strength too. Just because you did the same weight for the same reps, but you were in better control shows, I made progress there.
Right.
So that's really important. I've honestly, thinking about the training videos, one of the reasons you said it's accountability, mine is, and we've been open about wanting to expand social media platform a little bit too. For me, mine has been more of a mental growth for me. And it's interesting. People think, and I've had this discussion with, several people over the years. A lot of people think that when you're a bodybuilder or when you're in good shape, that you almost have an exorbitant amount of self-confidence. Like people will look at the way that I look and say, oh, he has all the confidence in the world. Like he posts pictures on social media without a shirt on and stuff like that, where in essence, it's the exact opposite. In fact, I'm just going to throw an ambiguous number out there. I would say like, probably over 3/4 of bodybuilders, if not more, started bodybuilding because of self-image issues or because of a lack of self-confidence. Now, I don't lack self-confidence across all areas of life, but in particular with how I look, I've been very selective with what I post on social media, as is everybody. And I posted about that before. So for me, coming off of a quarantine, because, I can't really remember if I went into huge detail, but just chronicling the last couple months, I competed in November last year, right? So you're obviously at the smallest body weight and super depleted. Like you look great, but as far as like actual size and strength goes, I was about as weak and as small as I could have been. So after training, or after my competition in November, December rolls around and I didn't get that big of a rebound because wrestling season was started. So that was, encompassing basically my full-time attention along with school. During wrestling season in December, I also got sick, which hindered progress and growth in the gym, so training was down and I was sick. Fast forward a couple months into February, I ended up getting sick again, very, very sick again. Whether it was coronavirus or not, who knows, but it was flu-like symptoms, trouble breathing, all that stuff. Then in March, obviously, was when the coronavirus became like a worldwide pandemic and was, highly recognized in the United States. So they shut everything down. So then took off several months. So really up until the past month or two, training and nutrition haven't been good at all. Like I went through some, not health issues, but some health things that I was investigating through blood work and stuff. So, I went probably 7 months. So it's, not that long, probably about 5 or 6 months where everything was crappy.
Right.
So me posting videos now, not that I'm weak and not that I'm tiny, but like at a place where I'm not pleased or satisfied with, was important for me to post these videos because it's like full transparency.
Yeah.
Like I'm not just going to show you the good lifts. Like I'm going to show you where I'm struggling with weight that I normally should never ever struggle with, but I'm just going to post that out there just so everybody can see. So for me, it was kind of like a therapeutic mental exercise. Like, hey, this is me at my worst, so to speak.
That's kind of funny you said that, because that's kind of one of the things I look at mine too, is like I post my videos and I don't take special angles. I don't take, I don't manipulate the camera or trim out. I trim out the walk back and forth because just for time frame.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't cut a whole bunch of stuff out of them. It's just it is what it is. That was the set I was going to record, so that's what you guys are going to see. It might be a horrible set. I mean, last week on one of my bench videos, the guy had to pick it up off of me. It is what it is.
I get so much respect for people that do that show like sets where they fail or something like that, because it's like that's number one, it's full of transparency, and it shows a little bit of like, it makes you understand that everybody's human and everybody, I don't want to say makes mistakes, because failure in training isn't a mistake, it's a byproduct of training hard and pushing your limits. But I love when people do that.
I give credit to CT Fletcher on that one, because I learned, part of what I've learned is watching his videos. And when somebody that's working out with CT, they say, how many we going to do this CT? And he's like, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Until you can't do another one. So I try to take everything to failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so every workout ends in some sort of a failing. But what I was mainly getting to there is like, I don't look aesthetically the greatest. You know what I mean? Like I still have a long way to go. I still have a lot of loose skin, a lot of a big midsection, whether it be loose skin or a lot of residual fat. But I want people to realize it doesn't matter what you look like; it matters what you're doing.
Yeah, and you have to understand where people came from too.
Right? Yeah, you have to understand where we're coming from. Whenever when you see my video, some people, and I've had comments where they're like, "How do you post those videos? Because aren't you self-conscious?" And I'm like, I used to be, but now I've learned and I've grown to be comfortable with my skin. And, I want to lead people to do the same thing. I want to lead people to find comfort and being comfortable in their own skin. I kind of like that as like a transition point almost into what we were going to talk about a little bit today, was leadership in the environment that you're in.
I find it hilarious, by the way, that we had this idea to talk about leadership. I shouldn't say we, wrong pronoun. You had this idea to talk about leadership because you came up with the topic last night and texted me about it, where we're going to talk about leadership. And I said, okay, well, we'll start this recording. I'll do the intro like normal, and then you can kind of do your spiel on leadership, at least to introduce it. And you ended up asking me how training was, and now a half hour later, we're still on this training tangent.
So
transitioning now into leadership, which you thought would be kind of a good talking point for us today, and we'll actually do a very, very good job of transitioning into future endeavors, because we have a couple of people lined up, 3 or 4 off the top of my head, for interviews that can speak specifically to leadership, which will be really, really good for us.
Yeah. I like leadership as a topic in talking, not just on this podcast and not just anywhere. Leadership is so important to me because it's one of the first things after I started to take control of my own life that I've become passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I look back and I've always been kind of passionate about it, and I just didn't realize that I was, if that makes sense.
No, for sure.
When I was 526 pounds, I was a leader at my job in the field as a trainer and one of the oldest drivers in the company. People looked up to me for example, and at that point in time in my life, I didn't lead by the example that I was preaching, right? Mm-hmm. I would, there were obviously that size. There's obviously corners you're cutting.
Yeah.
That's one big corner to cut to get to that size. I understand that, but looking at leadership for me, oftentimes people look at leaders and think of the boss of the company or the owner of the gym or the trainer in the scenario or the teacher in the front of the classroom.
Yeah.
I look at leadership. Obviously, those people are leaders. They're there for a reason. They are a leader in some way, shape, or form. Not always are they good leaders. Not always do they do the right thing all the time. But I look at leadership from the back of the classroom. What is that kid, and I say classroom because you're a teacher, mm-hmm. but I look at leaders. When I was a kid, my wife was a leader because I didn't learn from the teacher. in math class, she taught me how to do certain things because she took the time out of her studies to make sure that the people around her, not just me, but the seats all around her, where she would ask if we needed help with our studies. That's a leader.
Yeah.
Or on a job site where the boss comes and says, okay, this is what we're going to do today. This is the expectations. I set the bar here. We have to rise to the occasion. And then he gets in his truck and drives away and goes to the next job site and does the same thing. The leaders are the guys that keep the job moving because there's no boss there now. So like they say, when the dog's away, the cats will play. The cat's away, the mice will play.
Yeah.
And ideally that could happen in any situation. It takes the low level leaders to step up and say, okay, this is what we need to do, or not even say anything and just start working. And by that happening, other people fall in line and start doing the same thing.
I think there's importance or significance there in culture building. So the microcosm that I can speak to specifically, of course, is sports, because being a coach at multiple levels, that's always a hot topic in all sports is leadership.
Right.
Good programs. Let's take football, for example, because I've coached it the longest out of any of the sports I've coached. Football is a sport where good programs have great leadership, and bad programs have bad leadership or poor leadership, inexperienced leadership. And I've been on teams that I've coached that have been very, very good, and I've been on teams that haven't been so good. And really what it boils down to is not the talent isn't as big of a discrepancy as you would think. Of course, talent plays a role.
Right.
But on the teams that were good, we had great leaders, and we had several of them at all levels.
Right.
In different types. And then on the poorer teams, or the teams where we didn't do as well, we had fewer leaders and people that wanted to have a leadership role but weren't exactly sure how to go about it. So that when I think of leadership, I always think of two issues, and I don't know where I stand on both of them. So like, you can give your insights, our listeners probably have their idea, but I'll just tell you the dilemma that I'm in. When I think of leadership, I have to ask two questions. Number one question is it innate or is it learned? So can you become a leader or are you born a leader? And then the second question I have is, what does leadership look like? Because there's multiple levels to that. So let's tackle the first. Is a leader born? Is a leader made? Or can it be a combination of the two, like a genetic expression where, let's take smoking, for example. Smoking can cause lung cancer in people if genetically they're predisposed to that, or people can smoke and live up to be 120 and have no issues. Is leadership something that can be both innate and made in you? Maybe you have it to begin with, but you need to, it won't be expressed unless you have proper training and understanding of what it takes to be a leader. I don't really know.
That's unique.
One of the greatest compliments, and I have to do a self-promotion here, and I hate to say anything, especially on air, that's like patting myself on the back. Like, I'm very hesitant to do that just because I don't want to sound like, conceited or whatever. But one of the greatest compliments I've ever had in my life was from my high school principal. And I'll have to reach out to him after this because I haven't spoken with him in 10 years and tell him, that this really resonated with me and has always stuck with me. Is he was talking to my parents one time and said that in all his 30, 40 years of education or whatever it was, he said he's never seen anybody who had more natural leadership skills than me. He said, your son, whenever he is in charge of a large group of people, he said he can get anybody to do anything. They just listen to him. They follow him. He said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, he says jump and the whole school says how high. And I think back on that, and it's like pretty profound statement to say that you have that much, not control over people, but people value who you are as a person or what you have to say, and they're just gravitating towards you. And, I think back to like sports experiences where even if I wasn't the best player on the team, I felt like I was the best voice on the team where people would actually listen to what I had to say more than anybody else.
Right.
I don't know if that started from a young age, like, middle school being the quarterback where you're the vocal leader, where coach would say, hey, this is his team, you got to listen to him or whatever. And that's just, it was always very impactful when he said that to my parents, because I thought, if I have this power or whatever it is where people gravitate towards me, I guess I can use this for good or I can use it for bad. So in essence, you would think that I was bored with it, but at the same time, since then, I've been actively working towards being a better leader. So like yeah, I was born with this leadership skill, but like I've tried to hone it and do the best that I can with it. So like I don't know. Is it born? Are you born with it? Can you make it? Like can you make someone who's not a leader a leader?
Yes, I think you can. I think if they desire to be the best that they can be. So I don't think to me, I don't think leadership doesn't have to be born into you, but the desire to be good or to be excellent at something is indicative to leadership.
Because that leads to the next topic then, or the next question is, what is leadership? So leadership, most people, when they think stereotypically about leadership, they think of being vocal, right? This is what we're going to do, or this is what you're going to do. Let's talk the football scenario. The vocal leader who's always getting the team pumped up. The hype guy who could bring negative energy sometimes yelling at people, but that's also accountability. Like, hey, this is what you got to do.
So then if we were on the football topic, and then I'll throw in movies there at the same time. Not Remember the Titans, Friday Night Lights, right?
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the locker room scene, Preacher Man
goes off. Yeah.
When he goes off, he's the quiet guy. He never gives anything more than one or two words. But I got goosebumps talking about that scenario when at halftime everybody's like, he's like, everybody's crying and complaining, and he's like, no, let's go.
Yeah.
That's a leader. The guy who knows the time, knows his place, stay in your lane. But when it's time to get things done, they rise to the top.
There's the lead by example.
Right.
And my stance on leadership has changed over the years. So several years ago, the particular football player named Tanner, who is the school that I teach at and the school that you graduated from, he's currently their quarterback and has been for the past couple of years. Tanner, when he was in middle school, very quiet kid. Best player on the team by far, but just a very quiet kid. And he and I kind of worked in like almost like a mentorship scenario. He didn't need a mentor because he comes from a wonderful family, but I kind of took it upon myself as his future coach just to give him a little bit of guidance, because I was training him at the time at the gym too. He was, like I said, he was in middle school. And I would always give him bits and pieces of information that I thought were like wise. And one of the things that I was constantly on him about was his leadership. And he is the perfect lead by example person. But I said, you need to be more vocal. I said, you have to be more vocal. You have to, rally the troops. You have to hold people accountable. You have to do all this. And over the years, watching him, and it's not just him in particular, it's several people, that I've kind of changed my stance on that. And I don't think that just because you're a leader means you have an ethical or moral responsibility to be a vocal one. Because I think that some of your best leadership comes from quiet mouths.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole premise behind extreme ownership is as the leader in a scenario, as the actual person who's leading a scenario, you should be just go with the motion with the troops because everybody's functioning properly. But when something goes wrong, you're not the one pointing a finger. You're the one saying, wait a minute, this is what we did wrong. I think I could have changed this scenario this way or that way. And extreme ownership is Jocko Willink's thought process, and I love it. It's amazing. I've read the book 100 times. I'm exaggerating, but to talk about leadership and not talk about owning a scenario is like they can't go together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, well, to me, leadership is, I like how you said it doesn't have to be where you used to think it had to be the vocal guy. And now you go back to you thinking it doesn't have to be the vocal guy. It doesn't have to be the one that's screaming at everybody because those guys are important and they are leaders. But that was my whole thought on this is people always look at that guy that is the vocal one or the coach, right? I like since we're on the football scenario, when the coin toss and everybody, each team sends out 3 or 4 captains and they do the coin toss. I can't remember where I seen it, but I seen one time where the whole team walked out for the coin toss. And I like that. In a different scenario where a coach could literally say, you, and you, go. Because these people, whenever you have good leadership on a football team or in an organization, every person throughout the whole organization is going to make the same decision.
Yeah.
They know that we want to defend this end and that we want to defer to the second half.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. You could take the JV punter, the third string punter, long snapper even, and they're gonna know that we want tails. We want to defend this end, and we're gonna defer the second half.
Whenever you establish a positive culture, whether it's in sports or business or life or whatever, whenever you establish a positive culture and you have people on the same page, that's where you have the different levels of leadership. You have your vocal leaders, you have your people that lead by example, and then of course you have your followers, which isn't a bad thing. If there are instances where everybody needs to be put into a leadership role, but if you're a follower in the particular role that you're in, that's okay too, as long as the leadership is of quality.
Right.
Don't
follow a bad leader.
And I don't like when I see people who are followers by nature. You don't want it, because leadership has so much positive connotation that goes along with it, that I don't want people to look at followership as being negative, because it's not. But when you have people in a particular situation where they are followers and they want to become leaders, I think personally that the number one place you have to start is within. You have to look at the mirror first and hold yourself accountable, because then because leadership has to be earned.
Yes.
It's like respect. Respect and leadership are synonymous. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like, if people respect you, you will be put into a leadership role. Think about, let's use football, for example. Again, I've had players over the past that have wanted to be vocal leaders, but they haven't proven themselves on the field yet. So people are hesitant to learn or listen to them, because they don't want to hear from this person, because this person isn't better than me.
Yeah.
Over time, as those particular individuals grow and become better football players, their leadership skills have remained the same, but their listenership has an uptake. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, look at this. This guy knows, I trust this guy more because he's performing on Friday nights. So now I'm a little more apt to listening to him.
Right. A lot of time, there's a statistic, and I don't know, and it's kind of shameful. This was my topic. But there's a statistic that says that X amount of people that are like super successful leaders never had ambitions to be a leader. Like, high-level executives that wanted to be just a broom pusher, just the guy that took the garbage out. And through hard work and dedication to their craft, they honed in on what they did, and they excelled, so they were moved up to this. Then they honed in, and they excelled, they moved up to this. They brought people up with them. They built a team, and then lo and behold, in 10 years, now they're the CEO of Microsoft.
And success kind of breeds a situation where you are left with no choice but to be placed into a leadership role.
Right.
So if you're successful, people are naturally going to gravitate towards you. And then you in turn kind of that's always a debate in sports, is, do athletes have an ethical or moral responsibility to be good role models? One of the arguments is yes, because their platform and their outreach is so huge. But then on the other hand, you say no, because they didn't put themselves in a role where they asked to be a leader.
Right.
They play sports, they got famous, and now people are expecting them to be, the kings or queens of morality just because they're in the spotlight. So they have to do everything right. And of course there, needs to be a blend with both. But I've seen it happen in football, where sometimes your best player isn't necessarily a leader, but has to become a leader, because whether you like it or not, you're one of the best players, so eyes are looking towards you.
Yeah.
So in a situation on a fourth down and short, they're going to look at you and say, hey, what are we going to do now? You're our best player. You got to make this happen.
And that almost goes back to the Friday Night Lights when Boobie Miles got hurt. So before that, he was selfish. It's all about Boobie. It's all about Boobie. And then as he went through the movie and he gets hurt, and it comes to the end of that I believe it was a championship game, and he's like, coaching up his backup and teaching him and leading this kid to do what needs to be done. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And then that really, I didn't intend. Nowhere on my paper did I write down talk about Friday Night Lights, but it was a good scenario where that was leadership progressing and showing itself throughout a scenario.
And positive thoughts need to be coupled with positive action to kind of reaffirm what you're doing. So I know several people who are heavily invested in leadership and learning about it. So they'll read books on leadership. They'll attend leadership conferences, and inevitably you'll have a pretty large number of those people not really kind of adhere in practical ways to what they're learning. So they won't really put it into action. So they'll go and learn about leadership, but then your actions don't necessarily always revolve around that.
Right.
And sometimes that may be sending a red flag to you, just saying, hey, maybe you weren't cut out for a high-end leadership role. One of the things that has helped me with leadership, or I don't know if it's necessarily helped me or made it a little bit easier for me in certain circumstances, is communication, specifically public speaking. So like I've always been very, very comfortable speaking. I mean, you could put 1,000, 10,000 people in front of me, and I think that I could talk without my heart rate getting elevated at all. Whereas you have other people who go in front of a classroom of 10 people and get nervous to speak.
Right.
I'm not sure why. I don't know if I was born with that or if it was something that accrued over time. I don't know, but I've never been one that has trouble speaking in front of large groups of people. In fact, sometimes I actually like it. It's weird because I don't want to say I like being the center of attention, because like when I go to the gym, for instance, I like being very honed into my workout. I'll talk to people, of course, and be social, but I don't want to I'm not at the gym to say, hey, look at me, everybody, and make a scene and, talk to people in that sense. And that's kind of how I am, like, even when I go to the grocery store. Like, I always wear a hoodie, so a lot of times I'll wear my hood up in public, which some people may think's weird, but it's just kind of my way of being internalized and not really. Yeah, for sure. But then when I'm in a scenario where I have to speak in front of people, I don't mind how big the crowd is. Maybe some of that's from bodybuilding too, because you're more or less in underwear, standing on a stage, oiled up, flexing in front of people, 90% naked. Yeah. So like, I think that makes you comfortable with large crowds. And there's something very liberating for me about being in front of people. So I don't know if that's necessarily because I'm not, comparing standing on stage flexing to leadership just because you have a large audience. But I think that the comfortability of being in front of a large audience can make someone a better leader. So if you're someone out there looking to improve upon your leadership skills, one of the ways you can go about it, I think personally, would be to expand your outreach and learn to get comfortable in front of larger groups. So you don't have to revolutionize the masses and kind of shift everybody's complete paradigm of thought in being a leader in politics or religious views or whatever, but just learn to get comfortable in front of large crowds or more people. And I think that more or less will help with leadership, I guess.
I agree.
That's just my experience being in front of people. I think has helped me, being in front of people has helped me being in front of people.
I agree.
So it's just exposure to that. So again, going back to what you said, I think that that's not the only form of leadership. I think it's important to be recognizing the fact that leadership, it transcends just the person who shows the outward characteristics of a leader. So being vocal, being hardworking, all that stuff. I think all levels of leadership need to be hardworking, but certainly there's different levels, like you said, the person in the back who's a leadership too, which I have to give a little bit of a shout out here to Coach Williams, Jordan Williams, who's
absolutely
he was the head wrestling coach at Beaver Local, the school that you graduated from, that I teach at for several years.
He was instrumental in my success as a kid.
Yeah,
at Beaver Local.
Yeah,
he was still a wrestler there
in the high school Hall of Fame. And he is huge on positivity. So that is one of his main talking points, is optimism, being a positive person. And I would kind of get frustrated at times with certain things, whether it's professionally or socially or whatever. And one thing that Coach Williams always taught me was to star in your role. So it doesn't matter what you do, your role to the team is important. So for me with wrestling, getting involved with wrestling, I didn't know anything. Now, I watch wrestling. I'm familiar with it. I know how the scoring works and stuff. But as far as coaching it goes, I wasn't necessarily able to coach it because, I didn't know what moves to do in certain situations. I had never been a wrestler growing up. I was in combat sports and, jiu-jitsu in college, but never to the point where I would be able to coach anything. And his thing was, that'll come. You'll learn that stuff. He said, just star in your role. You're the strength conditioning coach. Be the best strength and conditioning coach in the state. Do the best that you can do. And Jordan is always very adamant about that. It's starring in your role. And I think that is a representation of proper leadership more than anything, is on your team. It doesn't matter what your job is, if you're the third string or the second string or the starter, be a leader on your team by starring in your role and doing your role to the best of your ability.
Right.
It's kind of like I think of The Waterboy. And when Adam Sandler in the movie The Waterboy is like taking care of the water, and he's like measuring the temperature, and he's got like he is the best water boy.
He's a star in his role.
He's starring in his role. And I know that that's not the point of the movie, is to express leadership. It's a comedy, but still, you take that away, and you can see what I'm talking about. And sometimes I find myself not doing the day-to-day tasks as effectively, might be a good word, or as thoroughly as I need to do them. So like we've talked about it before, if we're going to do this podcast, let's do it 100%.
100%.
If you're going to go to the gym, let's do that 100%. And in turn, I think that your leadership skills will strengthen, because people will see the way that you do things and say that, oh, well, Justin works really hard, so I want to work hard like him. And there's been instances where I've taken, motivation, and I've taken inspiration from everywhere, just because of people working hard. And I see that. And so you can be a leader and not even know that you're a leader,
right?
Where eyes are on you and people are getting motivation from you and don't even realize it.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, is starring in your role. I like that. I think we should end on star in your role.
Yeah. So a shout out to Coach Williams and his
Yes.
wonderful insights on that. All right. So that was, a very, very quick, almost an hour. Gosh, I feel like with leadership, there's so many intricacies that are interwoven into leadership that I feel like we could go on forever. Right. I think this is a great kind of transition into future episodes, to where we'll have people on that know a lot more about leadership than we do, have been put into higher levels of leadership than we have been. This is just kind of us generating some talking points about what is leadership, who is a leader, what does leadership look like,
right.
And then hopefully, as we have these high-end and high-level guests on in the future,
get to learn something.
Those are people that we can learn from. Exactly, because I say, and we try to tag everything and annotate everything with our opinion, our experience. Like, we're not saying this is what leadership is. This is just, hey, leadership based on what we've seen, based on me teaching people in the classroom, or you teaching people at your, occupation, or us both being in the gym, or us both being involved in sports, or whatever. We're just speaking to what we think leadership looks like to us, not necessarily what leadership looks like to other people, or what true leadership really is, because can you really nail down a definition of what leadership looks like?
Right.
Can you answer the question, is leadership something you're born with or something you have to work for? You don't really know. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that.
I think it's opinion based.
For sure. Yeah, so I think, again, this is a really good spot for us to end, because it transitions into future episodes. So before we end, we have to, of course, give a shout out to our sponsor, like we do every episode, Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course, delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders for pre-order in order to ensure that they'll be packed fresh and ship them out ASAP. They offer flat rate shipping of $15 due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. And Shannon Noor, who is, again, one of our former guests on episode 25, maybe 25. Gosh, I hope I'm not misleading people. I think it was episode 25 where we had Shannon on. We actually had her on for 2 episodes, because her story was so in depth that we kind of had to go into greater detail. So we ended up doing 25 and 26. Both of our episodes were dedicated to her, how she overcome an eating disability as a young girl, and suffered for several years when she was hospitalized with an eating disorder. She went to kind of quote unquote rehab for that. Overcoming a teenage pregnancy, didn't finish high school. Now she's a business owner, a registered nurse, and a successful professional athlete. Yeah. So that was a really cool story. Well, her company, Beast Mode Baking, as many of you know, or especially those of you who have listened to the show before, has come on as a sponsor for us. So she's actually come out with a new product line. And again, I know we say this every episode, but you guys have to see the quality of the products.
Yes.
Yeah, us describing them don't do it justice. Thankfully, she posts it on Instagram all the time, all of her creations, and they look ridiculously good. So she came out with a summer treats line. So again, these are all pre-order. She came out with Health Nut, Don't Be Jelly, Fruity Pebbles, peanut butter maple bacon, caramel apple pie, blueberry cheesecake, lemon raspberry donut. Those are the cookie flavors. And then she also has brownies, Fluffer Nutter, and Oreo Ding Dong Delight. So if you are interested in order from Beast Mode Baking, you can access their website or contact Shannon directly via social media, because her Instagram is at snor13. That's at SKNORR13. So, man, leadership in a nutshell.
That's it. It is the center around everything we do.
Certainly, for sure.
I think it's definitely crucial to talk about and learn about. It's not just, like you said, I like how you always talk about these are our opinions, and we haven't really talked about leadership so much other than right now. So learning your opinion, and now you've learned some of my opinion. Hopefully that can help us form our own new opinions.
Yeah, and form a more concrete definition of what leadership is and how to become a better leader. So moving forward with our guests in the near episodes or the near future episodes, we'll be learning more and more about leadership and kind of solidify our views, and hopefully our listeners can do the same.
Absolutely.
So with that, we have come to the end of another episode. This has been episode 33 of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. So we are out, and enjoy that outro music.
Unbreakable, unstoppable.